Jake Harrison pressed his face against the cold window of the spaceship. The stars looked different out here so far from Earth. Some were blue, some were red, and some were colors he had never seen before. But what made his heart beat fast was the huge metal structure getting bigger in front of them. The Galactic Council Station was bigger than any city on Earth. It had thousands of lights blinking on its surface. Ships from all over the galaxy moved around it like busy bees. Jake had seen pictures, but seeing it in real life made him feel very small. "First time seeing the station?" asked Captain Amy Stone. She was the pilot of their Earth ship, the UES Liberty. Amy had short brown hair and kind eyes. She had been to space many times, but this was her first trip to the Council Station too. "Yeah," Jake said, "it's huge. How many aliens live there?" "About 50,000 from 12 different species," Amy said. "Each species has their own section. The human section is pretty small. We're the new guys, remember?" Jake nodded. He was 34 years old, but he felt like a kid going to his first day at a new school. 6 months ago, he was fixing machines on Titan, one of Saturn's moons. Now he was going to represent all of humanity to the most powerful group in the galaxy. The job was supposed to go to a real diplomat, someone who went to fancy schools and knew how to talk pretty. But Earth's government had a problem. Every diplomat they sent to the council failed. They came back saying the aliens were too smart, too old, and too set in their ways. Then someone had a crazy idea. What if they sent an engineer instead? Someone who solved problems for a living. Someone who didn't care about fancy words and just wanted to get things done. That someone was Jake. Jake grew up in a small town in Ohio. His dad fixed cars and his mom was a teacher. Jake was good with his hands and better with machines. He joined the military when he turned 18. The military taught him how to fix things that were broken and how to build things that worked. After the military, Jake worked on Mars and then on Titan. Space was dangerous, and machines broke all the time. When something broke in space, people could die. So Jake got very good at fixing things fast and making them work better than before. The call came on a Tuesday. A serious woman in a black suit appeared on his video screen. She said the president wanted to talk to him. Jake thought it was a joke until the president himself called an hour later. "We need someone different," the president said. "Someone who thinks different. The aliens don't respect our diplomats, but maybe they'll respect someone who can actually do things." Jake almost said no. He liked his job on Titan. He liked fixing things and being left alone. But then the president said something that changed his mind. "Jake, humanity needs you. We're the smallest, weakest species in the council. If we don't prove ourselves soon, they might kick us out. And if they kick us out, we'll be alone in the galaxy forever." So Jake said yes. Now, 3 weeks later, he was looking at the council station and trying not to throw up from nervousness. "Tell me about the other species again," Jake said to Amy. Amy smiled. She knew Jake was nervous even though he tried to hide it. "Okay, the Zolonians are the leaders. They look like walking crystals and they're really, really old. Some of them have been alive for thousands of years. They think they're smarter than everyone else and they might be right." "What about the scary ones? The Thurak Empire. Big lizard guys with lots of teeth. They love to fight, and they're really good at it. They control about a quarter of the galaxy through fear. Don't make them angry." Jake laughed, but it wasn't a happy laugh. "Great. Crystal people who think I'm stupid and lizard people who want to eat me." "The others aren't so bad," Amy said. "The Etherians are the peaceful ones. They can read minds, which is creepy, but they're nice. The Vortani are the traitors. They'll sell you anything if the price is right. Then there are 8 smaller species. They mostly just agree with whatever the Big Four say." The ship shook a little as it got closer to the station. Jake could see other ships now. Some looked like Earth ships with straight lines and simple designs. Others looked like works of art with curves and colors that seemed to flow like water. One ship looked like it was made of pure light. "How long have they been out here?" Jake asked. "The Zolonians have been in space for 50,000 years, Amy said. The Thurak for about 30,000. Even the newest species besides us has been spacefaring for 5,000 years. And humans? We've had faster-than-light travel for exactly 57 years. Jake felt that nervous feeling in his stomach again. 50,000 years versus 57 years. It was like a baby trying to sit at the grown-up table, but Jake had learned something in his years of fixing broken things. Age didn't always mean wisdom. Sometimes old systems were just old, and they needed fresh thinking to make them work better. Sometimes the person who built something knew less about fixing it than the person who had to live with it every day. "Incoming message from Council Station Control," Amy announced. A new voice filled the ship, speaking perfect English but with a strange accent. "UES Liberty, you are cleared for docking at Human Section, Bay 7. Welcome to Galactic Council. Station." Jake took a deep breath. This was it. In a few minutes, he would step off this ship and into a world where humans were the smallest fish in the biggest pond in the galaxy. But Jake had something the other species didn't expect. He had spent his whole life being underestimated. His teachers thought he wasn't smart because he didn't like books. His officers thought he was just a mechanic because he got his hands dirty. His bosses thought he was simple because he talked. Plain. They were all wrong. As the ship docked with a soft thump, Jake stood up and straightened his simple blue suit. He wasn't wearing the fancy uniforms the other diplomats preferred. He looked like what he was, a working man ready to get things done. "Ready?" Amy asked. Jake smiled, and this time it was real. "Let's go show them what humans can do." Jake walked through the station hallways, trying not to stare at everything. The walls were made of some kind of metal that seemed to glow with its own light. Strange symbols moved across screens that floated in the air. The air smelled like flowers, mixed with electricity. Other aliens walked past him without looking. A tall blue creature with 4 arms carried a briefcase in each hand. A small furry thing that looked like a cat riding on 2 legs rolled by on what might have been wheels. 2 floating jellyfish-like beings drifted overhead, speaking in musical sounds. "The human section is this way," said Lieutenant Dan Cooper. Dan was Jake's assistant, a young man from the Space Force who knew 6 alien languages. He had arrived at the station 2 weeks ago to prepare for Jake's visit. "How do I look?" Jake asked as they walked. "Like a guy who fixes machines," Dan said with a smile. "Is that good or bad? We'll find out." They reached a large door marked with symbols Jake couldn't read. Dan pressed his hand against a glowing panel and the door opened. Inside was a small room with human furniture that looked very plain compared to everything else Jake had seen. "This is our office," Dan said. "Your room is through that door. The main council chamber is 2 levels up. Your first meeting is in 1 hour." Jake sat down in a simple chair and looked at the papers Dan had prepared for him. There were files on each of the 12 alien species, maps of their territories, and reports on old conflicts. But what caught his attention was a thick folder marked Current Disputes. "What's this one about?" Jake asked, pointing to the first case. "The Outer Rim conflict," Dan said. 3 species are fighting over a star system called Kepler 442. It has planets with valuable metals. They've been arguing about it for 2 years. Nobody can agree on who gets what. Jake opened the file and started reading. The Thurak Empire wanted the system because they were strong and could take it. The Vortani Collective wanted it because they found it first. The Etherian Commonwealth wanted it because they said the planets had spiritual importance. "What do the reports say about the planets?" Jake asked. Dan pulled out more papers. 3 planets total. The first one is too hot to live on but has rare metals underground. The second one has good mining potential. The third one is cold and mostly ice. Not worth much. Jake studied the files more carefully. His engineering mind started working like it did when he looked at a broken machine. He saw numbers and facts, but he also saw things that didn't add up. "Dan, do we have detailed scans of these planets?" "Sure, but they're pretty technical. The other diplomats never asked for them." "I'm not other diplomats." Dan brought up holographic displays showing the 3 planets. Jake looked at the technical readouts like he was reading a repair manual. Mineral content, atmospheric data, geological surveys, energy readings. Then he saw it. "Dan, look at this. Energy signature from the 3rd planet." Dan squinted at the display. "Looks like geothermal activity. Lots of planets have that." "No," Jake said, standing up and pointing at the screen. "This pattern is too regular, too organized. This isn't natural geothermal energy. This is artificial. What do you mean? I mean someone built something on that planet. Something big. Something that's still working after who knows how long. Before Dan could respond, a chime sounded through their office. A pleasant computer voice said, "Human Representative Harrison, please report to council chamber for scheduled session." Jake's stomach did a little flip. Time to go. The council chamber was the biggest room Jake had ever seen. The ceiling was so high he couldn't see the top. 12 huge platforms were arranged in a circle, each one designed for a different type of alien. Some had stairs, some had ramps, and some seemed to float in the air. The human platform was the smallest and lowest. Jake climbed up and sat in a chair that felt like it was made for a child. Around him, the other council members took their places. The Zolonian leader looked like a walking diamond the size of a tree. Light bounced off its surface in patterns that hurt Jake's eyes. The Thurak representative was a massive lizard creature with scars covering his dark green skin. His teeth were longer than Jake's fingers. The Etherian delegate floated above her platform like a ghost made of silver light. The Vortani looked like a squid wearing a business suit. The other 8 species ranged from insect-like to plant-like, to things Jake couldn't even describe. The Zolonian leader spoke in a voice that sounded like wind chimes. A translator device turned his words into English. "We call this session to order. Today we address the continuing dispute over the Kepler 442 system." For the next 30 minutes, Jake listened as each species made their argument. The Thurak representative pounded his platform and roared about strength and conquest. The Vortani spoke in numbers and percentages, talking about profit margins and trade routes. The Etherian sang her words in a voice that made Jake feel sleepy and peaceful. Each argument was long, complicated, and full of words that meant nothing. Jake had heard the same kind of talk from corporate managers who spent hours in meetings without ever solving anything. Finally, the Zolonian leader's crystal surface flashed with bright colors. "The newest council member will now present humanity's position on this matter. Human Harrison, speak." The chamber became quiet. Jake could feel 12 different types of eyes looking at him. Some seemed curious, others seemed bored, and a few seemed annoyed that they had to listen to the primitive human. Jake stood up slowly. His platform was so low he had to look up at everyone else. But he had spent his life being the shortest guy in rooms full of tall people. It didn't bother him anymore. "I've been listening to your arguments," Jake said. His voice carried clearly through the chamber without any fancy speeches or big words. "You're all fighting over the wrong thing," the Thurak representative growled. "Explain yourself, small human." Jake activated the chamber's holographic system, something Dan had shown him how to use. The technical scans of the 3 planets appeared in the air above the council members. "You all want the first 2 planets because they have valuable metals. That makes sense. But you're ignoring the 3rd planet because you think it's worthless. Ice, you're wrong." Jake highlighted the energy readings he had noticed earlier. These energy patterns show active technology buried under the ice. Old technology. Really old. Probably older than any of your civilizations. The chamber erupted in surprised sounds from 12 different species. The Zolonian leader's crystal body flashed rapidly between colors. "What kind of technology?" the Etherian asked, her musical voice now sharp with interest. "Terraforming equipment," Jake said. "Machines that can change dead planets into living worlds. Still working after thousands, maybe millions of years. Whoever built this stuff was way more advanced than any of us." The Vortani representative leaned forward. "If this is true, the value of such technology would be beyond calculation." "It is true," Jake said. "I'm an engineer. I know what working machines look like, even alien ones. The question isn't who gets to own this system. The question is who gets to study it." Jake looked around the chamber at the surprised faces. "Stop fighting over rocks and metals. Work together to unlock technology that could help everyone. Form a research partnership. Share the knowledge based on how much each species contributes to the project." The Zolonian leader was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice had a different tone. "This proposal has merit, Human Harrison. You demonstrate analytical capabilities we did not expect." Jake sat back down, his heart beating fast. Around him, the council members began talking among themselves in their various languages. Some sounded excited, others sounded worried. He had passed some kind of test, Jake realized. But he had a feeling the real tests were just beginning. 3 months had passed since Jake's first day at the council. His small office now had stacks of reports from different alien species asking for his help. The Etherians wanted him to look at their food shortage problem. The smaller species asked him to review trade agreements that seemed unfair. Even some Vortani merchants requested his advice on shipping routes. Jake sat at his desk reading about water purification systems for a desert planet when Dan rushed into the room. His young assistant looked worried. "Jake, we have a problem," Dan said, closing the door behind him. "What kind of problem?" "The big kind. War Chief Gromack from the Thurak Empire wants to see you. Alone." Jake put down his reports. Gromack was the scariest alien on the station. He was 8 feet tall, covered in battle scars, and had killed more enemies than most species had soldiers. The fact that he wanted a private meeting was not good news. When? Now. He's waiting in conference room 7. Jake stood up and straightened his jacket. "If I don't come back in an hour, call Captain Stone." "That's not funny, Jake." "I'm not joking." Conference room 7 was in the neutral section of the station. Jake walked through corridors that seemed darker and quieter than usual. When he reached the room, he found Gromack standing with his back turned, looking out a large window at the stars. The Thurak war chief was even bigger up close. His dark green skin was covered with old wounds that had healed into raised scars. Each scar probably had a story about some battle he had won. His claws were as long as kitchen knives and looked just as sharp. "Human Harrison," Gromack said without turning around. His voice sounded like rocks grinding together. "Your influence grows quickly." "I just try to help solve problems," Jake said, staying near the door. Gromack turned around slowly. His yellow eyes were like a snake's eyes, cold and calculating. "Problems? Yes. You solve many problems lately. Trade disputes, resource conflicts, territorial arguments, all solved by the clever human engineer." Jake didn't say anything. He had learned that sometimes the best thing to do was listen. "But you create problems too," Gromack continued, taking a step closer. "The small species no longer fear the strong ones. They ask questions. They make demands. They forget their place in the natural order. Maybe the natural order isn't working." "Very well," Jake said. Gromack's lips pulled back, showing teeth that could bite through steel. "Dangerous words, human. Your species is new to the galaxy. You do not understand how things work. Peace exists because the strong control the weak. When the weak get ideas above their station, wars begin. Or maybe wars begin because the strong won't share power with anyone else." Gromack took another step forward. Now he was close enough that Jake could smell his breath, which was like rotten meat. "Your home world is small and far away. Earth has 1 star, a few planets, and no real military. It would be very sad if something happened to such a peaceful place." Jake felt his heart speed up, but he kept his voice calm. "Are you threatening Earth, War Chief?" "I am explaining reality. The Thurak Empire has many ships, many weapons, many warriors who have been too long without a good fight. Sometimes accidents happen in space, ships get lost, planets have problems with their life support systems." Now Jake understood. His success at the council was making the big powers nervous. Species that used to automatically agree with the Thurak Empire were starting to think for themselves. Trade deals that used to benefit only the major powers were being rewritten to help everyone. "What do you want, Gromack?" "I want you to remember your place. Humans are observers, not leaders. You can give advice when asked, but you will stop encouraging others to challenge established authority. The galaxy has an order that has worked for thousands of years, an order that keeps you on top and everyone else underneath." Gromack's claws extended with a clicking sound. "Yes, and it will stay that way." The war chief walked toward the door, then stopped. "You have intelligence, human. Use it. Accept the way things are, and your species can have a long, peaceful future. As junior members of the galactic community, continue on your current path and Earth may discover why the Thurak Empire rules through strength. After Gromack left, Jake sat alone in the conference room for a long time. Through the window, he could see Thurak warships patrolling around the station. They had always been there, but now he wondered if there were more of them than usual. When Jake got back to his office, he found Captain Stone waiting for him. Amy looked as worried as Dan. "We need to talk," she said. Privately. The three of them went to Jake's quarters, a small room with a bed, a desk, and a window that showed the stars. Amy activated a small device that would prevent anyone from listening to their conversation. "Earth intelligence picked up something disturbing," Amy said. "Thurak fleet movements near our solar system. Big movements, like they're getting ready for something." Jake told them about his meeting with Gromack. When he finished, Dan was pale and Amy was angry. "They can't just threaten Earth because you're doing a good job," Amy said. "They can and they are," Jake replied. "The question is, what do we do about it?" Amy pulled out a secure tablet and showed Jake classified reports from Earth. "There's more. We intercepted communications between the major powers. They're planning to call for a vote to expel humanity from the Council." "On what grounds?" "Disrupting traditional power structures, using unauthorized methods to gain influence, being a security threat to galactic stability." Jake laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "In other words, for being too successful?" "Exactly. And once Earth is expelled from the Council, we're no longer protected by galactic law. The Thurak Empire can attack us and claim they were defending galactic security." Jake walked to his window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there was Earth, with its blue oceans and white clouds, and 7 billion people who had no idea. Their entire future hung in the balance. "When is the vote?" he asked. "Next week. Emergency session." Jake thought about everything he had learned in his 3 months at the Council. The politics, the personalities, the unspoken rules that kept the major powers in control. He thought about the smaller species who had started to hope for something better. He thought about his hometown in Ohio and his parents and all the people on Earth who were counting on him to keep them safe. "Amy, I need you to send a message to Earth. Tell them to start preparing the contingency plans." "Which contingency plans?" Jake turned away from the window. His face was serious and determined. "All of them. If the major powers want to play games with Earth's survival, they're about to learn why humanity didn't ask permission before we developed faster-than-light travel." Amy and Dan looked at each other. They had never seen Jake like this before. The friendly engineer who fixed problems with a smile was gone. In his place was someone harder, colder, and much more dangerous. "Jake, what are you planning?" Dan asked. "I'm planning to give the Council a choice," Jake said. "They can accept humanity as equals, or they can face us as enemies. But either way, they're going to respect us." Outside the window, the stars seemed to flicker like they were afraid. The emergency council session was different from any meeting Jake had attended before. Armed guards from multiple species stood around the chamber. Thurak soldiers with energy weapons watched from the upper levels. The air felt thick with tension and barely hidden fear. Jake walked to his platform knowing this might be his last day as humanity's representative. Word had spread through the station that the major powers were calling for Earth's expulsion. Some of the smaller species looked at him with sympathy. Others avoided his eyes completely. War Chief Gromack sat on his platform like a king on a throne. His scarred face showed satisfaction, like a hunter who had cornered his prey. Next to him, the other major power representatives looked confident and ready for victory. The Zilonian leader called for order, but his crystal body flickered with nervous energy. "This emergency session addresses serious concerns about the stability of our galactic community. Recent events have raised questions about certain member species and their place in the established order." Jake listened as speaker after speaker made their case against humanity. The Vortani claimed that human trade suggestions had disrupted profitable arrangements that had existed for centuries. The Etherians worried that direct communication styles were damaging the careful diplomatic traditions of the Council. But it was Gromack who delivered the strongest attack. The massive Thurak stood to his full height, making even the other large aliens look small. The Thurak Empire presents evidence that humanity poses a direct threat to galactic security, Gromak announced. His voice carried clearly through the vast chamber. Earth has concealed military capabilities beyond reported levels. They use deception and manipulation to gain influence they have not earned. Holographic displays appeared showing long-range scans of the Earth system. Jake recognized some of the images, but others were new to him. The scans showed defensive platforms around Earth's moon, hidden bases on Mars, and fleet formations that looked much larger than what Jake remembered. Furthermore, Gromak continued, human representatives have encouraged smaller species to challenge established authority. This threatens the stability that has kept peace in the galaxy for thousands of years. Other major powers echoed similar complaints. The message was clear. Humanity had grown too powerful too quickly, and they needed to be stopped before they upset the balance that kept the big species in control. When the accusations finished, the Zolonian leader turned toward Jake. The ancient crystal being's surface showed colors that Jake couldn't read, but the tone felt like pity mixed with regret. Human Harrison, you may present your species' defense before the council votes on your continued membership. Jake stood slowly. Around him, representatives from 12 species waited to hear what the human would say. Some looked curious, others looked bored, and several looked like they had already made up their minds. But Jake wasn't looking at them anymore. He was thinking about a conversation he had with his father before leaving Earth. His dad had told him that sometimes you have to show people who you really are, even if it scares them. You want to know about human military capabilities? Jake said, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber. Fine. Let me show you exactly what Earth has been building while you've been playing politics. Jake activated the chamber's holographic system and began displaying information that made the Thurak scans look like children's drawings. Earth's true defensive network appeared in the air above the council members, and the scale of it made several aliens gasp in shock. Hidden shipyards throughout the solar system, weapons platforms that could destroy entire fleets. Most impressive of all, the quantum-fold missile systems that could collapse star systems from thousands of light-years away. Humanity didn't come to the council looking for protection, Jake continued as shocked murmurs filled the chamber. We came looking for friends, but we've been preparing for war since the day we left our home planet. The display showed Earth's true fleet strength. Not the few dozen ships the council knew about, but thousands of vessels built in secret facilities. Each ship carried weapons that most species had never imagined. You think we're primitive because we're young, Jake said, looking directly at Gromak. You think we're weak because we prefer talking to fighting. You're wrong about both. Gromak's confident expression was changing into something that looked like concern. Around the chamber, other representatives were studying the holographic displays with growing alarm. Jake activated another section of his presentation. These are our defensive capabilities. Every approach to Earth is monitored by systems you can't detect. Every potential threat is tracked from the moment it enters our sensor range. The Thurak fleet currently positioned near our system. We've been watching you for weeks. The displays showed real-time tracking of Thurak ships, along with targeting solutions that could destroy them all within minutes. Gromak's yellow eyes went wide as he realized Earth knew exactly where his forces were and how to eliminate them. But here's what you really need to understand, Jake said, his voice becoming harder. Humanity developed these weapons because we learned early that the galaxy is a dangerous place. Every species we studied had been conquered, enslaved, or destroyed by someone stronger. We decided that would never happen to us. Jake looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of every representative who would look back. We kept our capabilities secret because we hoped peaceful cooperation would work. We wanted to prove that intelligence and friendship were better than fear and force. But if you prefer the old way of doing things, Earth is ready for that too. The chamber had become completely quiet. Even the guards seemed frozen as they realized they were looking at displays of weapons that could destroy their homeworlds. So here's your choice, Jake continued. Accept humanity as equal partners in a council based on cooperation instead of domination. Or face us as enemies with nothing left to lose and everything necessary to win. War Chief Gromak tried one last show of strength. The Thurak Empire does not respond to threats from inferior species. If humanity believes weapons make them our equals, we welcome the chance to test that theory. Jake's response was calm and cold. War Chief, your fleet has exactly 12 hours to withdraw beyond Neptune's orbit. After that deadline, you'll discover why peaceful species sometimes make the most dangerous enemies. Jake deactivated the holographic displays and sat back down. Around him, the council chamber erupted in urgent conversations as representatives contacted their home governments. The balance of power in the galaxy had just shifted completely, and everyone knew it. Gromack was speaking rapidly into a communication device, probably ordering his fleet commanders to verify what they had just seen. His expression grew more worried with each response he received. The Zilonian leader tried to restore order, but his crystal form was flashing rapidly through colors that indicated extreme agitation. The council will recess to consider this new information, he announced. As the representatives filed out of the chamber, Jake remained on his platform. Captain Stone appeared beside him, having watched the entire session from the human observer section. Think it worked? She asked quietly. Jake looked out at the alien representatives hurrying away to contact their governments. Some looked frightened, others looked angry, but none of them looked like they were planning to vote against humanity anymore. We'll find out soon enough, Jake said. Either way, they'll never underestimate humans again. Jake stood at his office window watching Thurak warships move away from the station. It had been 6 hours since his presentation to the council, and already the galaxy was changing. The massive alien vessels that had seemed so threatening yesterday now looked small and slow as they retreated toward their home territory. Dan burst through the door with a huge smile on his face. Jake, you need to see this. Reports are coming in from all over the galaxy. Jake turned from the window as Dan activated the holographic display system. News feeds from dozens of different worlds filled the air with information that made Jake's heart beat faster. The Thurak fleet near Earth pulled back 3 hours ago, Dan reported excitedly. All the way past Pluto. They're not just retreating, they're running. More reports appeared on the display. The Vortani Collective had sent a message requesting immediate trade negotiations with Earth. The Etherian Commonwealth wanted to discuss technology-sharing agreements. Even some of the smaller species were asking about defense partnerships. It's working, Jake said quietly. They're more afraid of fighting us than they are of treating us as equals. Captain Stone entered the office, carrying a secure communication device. Jake, President Martinez wants to talk to you directly. It's urgent. Jake took the device and activated the encrypted channel. The president's face appeared on the small screen, and he looked both relieved and worried at the same time. Jake, what you did today changed everything, the president said. Half the galaxy is calling us asking for meetings, and the other half is probably planning how to surrender if we ever attack them. But I need to know something. Can we actually back up what you promised? What do you mean, sir? I mean, if the Thurak Empire decides to test our defenses, can Earth really defend itself the way you claimed? Jake thought about all the classified reports he had read before coming to the council. Earth's defensive capabilities were more advanced than most people knew, but they weren't quite as overwhelming as he had made them appear. Mr. President, we can defend Earth against any reasonable attack. Our quantum fold weapons are real, and our fleet is much larger than anyone suspected. But if every major power in the galaxy decided to attack us at once, we'd have problems. So you were bluffing? I was negotiating from a position of strength we actually have, while making sure nobody wanted to test our limits. The president was quiet for a moment. Jake, you just turned humanity from the weakest species in the galaxy into one of the most feared. I hope you know what you're doing. After the call ended, Jake sat alone in his office thinking about what came next. Through his window, he could see alien ships from species that had never talked to humans before requesting permission to dock at the station. The galaxy's power structure was reshuffling itself around Earth's revealed capabilities. 3 days later, the council reconvened for its most important session in centuries. Jake walked into the chamber to find it completely transformed. The circular arrangement of platforms had been replaced with a long curved table, where all species could sit at the same level. The human seat was no longer the smallest or lowest. War Chief. Gromack sat across from Jake looking like a different creature entirely. The massive Thurak's confident arrogance had been replaced by cautious respect. When he spoke, his voice was formal and careful. The Thurak Empire acknowledges that our previous assessment of human capabilities was incomplete, Gromack announced to the chamber. We withdraw our objections to Earth's Council membership and request discussions about peaceful coexistence. The Zolonian leader's crystal form had stabilized into steady blue colors that indicated calm acceptance. The Council recognizes that recent revelations require adjustments to our traditional procedures. We propose establishing new protocols based on demonstrated capability rather than historical precedent. Jake stood to address the chamber, but his tone was completely different from his threatening presentation 3 days earlier. Humanity appreciates this council's willingness to adapt. We didn't reveal our defensive capabilities to frighten anyone, but to establish honest relationships based on mutual respect, rather than assumptions about weakness. Over the following hours, Jake outlined his vision for a reformed galactic government. Instead of the major powers dominating through fear and tradition, all species would participate based on what they could contribute. Earth would share advanced, defensive technologies with species that embraced cooperative principles. Trade agreements would benefit all participants instead of just the strongest. Most importantly, younger species would have real voices in galactic decisions instead of being forced to quietly agree with their superiors. The Etherian representative floated forward, her musical voice carrying new tones of respect. Human Harrison, your species offers intriguing possibilities for galactic development. The Etherian Commonwealth wishes to establish cultural and scientific exchange programs with Earth. Similar offers came from other species throughout the day. The Vortani wanted to learn human manufacturing techniques. Several smaller species requested defense partnerships. Even some Thurak commanders expressed interest in studying human military innovations. 6 months later, Jake stood at the observation deck of the newly renamed Cooperation Council Station. The massive structure was being expanded to accommodate growing membership as species that had been afraid to join the old council applied for positions in the new organization. Captain Stone joined him at the window, carrying reports from Earth about the latest developments. The Global Assembly approved your proposal, she told him. Earth will begin sharing quantum fold technology with allied species next month. Jake nodded as he watched ships from dozens of different worlds dock peacefully at the station. Former enemies worked together on joint research projects. Trade flowed freely without exploitation or unfair advantage. Most importantly, species that had been silent for centuries were now active participants in galactic decisions. You know what the best part is? Jake said to Amy. What's that? We didn't have to conquer anyone to get respect. We just had to show them we could if they forced us to. Through the window, Jake could see the construction of new facilities designed by human engineers working with alien architects. The galaxy was building something it had never had before, a truly cooperative government where strength came from, working together instead of dominating others. Jake had come to the council as humanity's representative, but he had become something more important. He was the person who showed the galaxy that there was a better way to organize civilization, not through fear and tradition, but through respect and cooperation. The universe was a big place with room for everyone to succeed. It just took an engineer from Ohio to figure out how to make it work. As Jake watched the stars through the station window, he thought about his father's advice about showing people who you really are. Humanity had shown the galaxy exactly what humans could do when pushed too far. But more importantly, they had shown what humans preferred to do when given the choice. The galaxy would never be the same again. And that was exactly what Jake had hoped for all along.